Welcome to Jammin' with Jason Mefford, a show where we discuss topics relevant to chief audit executives and professionals in audit, risk, and compliance. We discuss the technical and soft skills needed to navigate the minefields of organizations. You hear best practices and practical advice for helping you advance your career, and we'll even talk about music, mindfulness, and psychology, because we can. So sit back and relax while you listen to the #1 podcast in the world for internal auditors, unscripted and unedited. Hey everybody, I'm back talking with Toby DeRoche again, and this day would be the same as today, I think, right? So anyway, we're going to be talking about agile auditing because I know there's some misconceptions out there about agile auditing, what it is, and I know a lot of people are struggling to actually put something in practice that works. And so we're going to dig into that today because, you know, Toby's, you've done some work, a lot of work on this. There's kind of some common misconceptions that people have and some things that are missing. And when those things are missing or you have these misconceptions, it's almost impossible for you to actually switch to an agile approach, right?
It is, yeah.
Well, so let's jump in because I wanted to talk. Maybe let's talk first about some of the misconceptions. And the first one that I kind of see, is people think that agile auditing just means they're auditing faster.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it is?
It's not at all. It's funny.
What? That's not it at all?
It's wrong. Everybody's wrong. One of the first things people think is that they're going to start having these really, really short, really, really fast audits. And I've even seen people posting on LinkedIn, like, I'm so frustrated with this whole agile thing. How am I supposed to do an audit in 6 days? It's like, well, why in the world would you think you can do an audit in 6 days? Like, that's not the point of this. The whole point wasn't for us to be able to audit faster. The whole agility idea is that I'm auditing the things that matter right now.
Yeah.
And so, everybody should be aware of this right now. This is we all just lived it, right? We went through all of our audit planning at the end of 2019. And then at the beginning of 2020, you threw your plan in the trash because it didn't make any sense at all anymore.
Well, I think the same thing's going to happen with 2020 audit plans too.
I think, unfortunately, we're never going to stop this because our new reality is I need to be able to look ahead in a shorter time frame. I can't say what's going to happen a year from now. Things change too fast. And it's hilarious because we've been having this conversation for years now about auditing at the speed of risk. We're here, right?
So we've been here for a long time. Just right. People aren't getting it. Yeah.
No, they're not. And you look at people's audit plans and they're full of compliance and they're full of SOX and they're full of other stuff. And then they try to just squeeze in their risk-based work. But if that's our focus, if we're truly risk-based auditing, I can't plan ahead more than 3 months because 3 months from now, the world looks wildly different than it does right now. And so much has changed that things I thought were important back in December, by the time I get to June, July, none of that makes any sense anymore. Yeah. I need to reevaluate. I need to think about what's the new priority. So if I'm only planning stuff 1 quarter out and I get into this regular cadence of saying, I'm going to audit plan for 1 quarter. Right now, what's important to management, what's their strategic objectives and what's going on in the world, here are my audits based on that. And I'm going to do the same thing in March. I'm going to come up with the next set. I'm going to come up with the next set 3 months after that. And my plan is then always updating. You kind of get into this kind of like a continuous planning mode, continuous risk assessment. Mm-hmm. To think I can't project realistically. So let me just say for right now, I'm going to take 1 quarter.
Well, and I think though, right, that kind of leads into one of the second myths that a lot of people have, which is, well, if I'm doing agile auditing, then I don't do any audit planning. Right. Yep. And I think, again, that's not quite right. Yeah, you're not going to do annual cycles, but so how does it look different? It doesn't mean that we just throw planning out completely, but how does planning look a little bit different?
Well, and this is even, you say we're going to have quarterly plans and the financial services guys have a heart attack because they're used to their regulators coming back and saying, show me your 3-year plan.
I know.
And we can't get out of this idea that I have to have a 3-year plan. So let's say for most of us, right, we've got an annual. There's nothing wrong with still saying I have an annual plan, because you're going to have some compliance work you just have to do. And so maybe you're starting with that and saying, so here's when those required projects are going to happen. Or I have these risk-based ideas, but some of those audits have to happen in certain points in the year. And the thing that's going to change is going to be, so if I'm looking at Q1, then I'm going to put my plan together. Q1's risk assessment says I should do these 10 audits based on the risk assessment. Now, of those, I have capacity to do 5. So I'm going to pull those 5 and put that into Q1, because right now, that's what's important. But my capacity might be, here's what I can do in total minus what I know I have to do this quarter. Here's what I have left. So those 5 extra projects that I'm doing, that's, the part of the accumulation of everything that I could have done, because everything is going to be based on your capacity.
Well, and I think that's an important thing to remember too, because again, sometimes, like you said, compliance centric is just a part of the job at some organizations, right? You still have to do some of those compliance things because your regulators require it or whatever else, right? But and so it's being able to kind of marry together those two ideas.
It is.
Right. And focusing, it's kind of like what we talked about. It's not auditing faster, but it's auditing the things that really matter now. Yeah. Right.
What's interesting with this is we've done this idea before, because a lot of departments, especially as they get to be more mature, they start getting involved in those internal consulting engagements. You do that right now because it matters right now. We're rolling out a new system. I need help.
Well, we better do it right now. Yeah, we can't audit it after.
Right, I don't need help 2 years from now. I need it right now. And so we jump on an engagement like that, and we make recommendations and we move on, because today that's what mattered to management. And so we've already got kind of a concept for this. We're just taking it further.
Okay. Well, in other kind of myths that are there a little bit, because I know, sometimes people will say things like, well, I got a book on Agile and I read the book. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Right. But is that really true?
Oh God, no. So I've got that book.
You got the book.
Yeah, I read that book. I've read everything I can get my hands on around this whole idea. And the books are good if you're just getting started and you're trying to learn a whole lot about Agile. And this is where I went. I got deep into it. I read everything I could read on Agile. I went and got an Agile certification, and then immediately went back and said, okay, now how do I turn this into an Agile audit process that really makes sense? And I was talking with people who have done this, people who, former chief audit executives and directors of organizations who they went from traditional to Agile, and they could tell you the experience. And what they would tell you is, so here's why it failed. It failed because we got hung up on all the vocabulary. It failed because we were too focused on the theory. And then they start saying, well, I tried Kanban and I tried SAFe and I tried this and I tried Scrum, and like none of that stuff matters to us. Because when you really take it all back and say, I'm trying to build an Agile audit function, you're not trying to turn your audit department into an Agile project management team. You're taking the best of what Agile has and we make it work for us, because that's really the spirit behind this whole idea. The Agile purist will jump up and down and say Agile is a mindset. It's not a methodology. It's not a process. It's a way of thinking and it's a way of working. And they're absolutely right. And that's why we can take the best parts of that idea and we just make it our own. We don't have to be purists. We don't have to say, I'm going to take every single bit of what I learned in that book and make it work for me, because your department's different from another department. Your organization's different. The culture's different. How much capacity you have, the mix between risk and compliance, all of it is very unique to you. And so taking the best pieces of it and making it work for you is really the way to go.
Okay. Well, and I think that's where, again, like you said, sometimes we get so caught up or worried about the words, and it becomes kind of a substance over form kind of a deal, right? Where it's like, and okay, for some organizations that might be okay. If your organization, takes an agile mindset and it's kind of built into the culture and everybody's using all of that terminology, then you probably better learn the terminology.
Sure.
Right? So that you can speak to everybody else. But if you're not, then, again, it just seems like people are going to look at you like you're crazy
Mm-hmm.
because you're trying to push something, or again, use words like we use audit words already and confuse people. And now you're
Mm-hmm.
just throwing another language, if you will, on top of and confusing people more. Right. And like you said, I think I've seen so many people just talking about the theory,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know how to actually put it into practice in internal auditing.
Yeah. And that's really why I got focused on this a while back.
Mhm.
For I don't know, 3 or 4 years now, we've been talking about this,
Mhm.
and all I hear is theory all the time. I've sat in on conference presentations and webinars and and everybody has the best intentions with this. So I'm not trying to knock them at all, but it's all very theoretical. And they'll put up, here's a diagram of how it should go. But what they're not telling you is here's what it looks like in real life. And here's where it's not going to work out the best for you, and here's how you adjust to it. And they don't really lay it out in those terms of here's how I do it. So everything that I've been doing for the last month has really been about showing here's how you do it. So
Yep.
let's stop with the theory. Let's get down to the nitty gritty on this and say here's what it does.
Well, and that's why, if you're listening and you've gone to some of these same kind of presentations, or you've read a book, or you've, heard something on a conference, and it's still kind of confusing you, and you're like, how do I make this practical? Hold with us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we're going to share with you actually some ways that you can actually start making it very practical and give you exactly how to do that. No more theory BS, but actually how to put it in practice, um, and finally move the conversation forward.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of just talking about the theory for like we have been for 3 or 4 years, let's actually get in and actually get some shit done.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're done talking about it because the world won't let us anymore.
No,
Because
we,
too
we
much
don't
stuff
have,
has changed, and anybody trying to put together an annual plan right now, it's not going to work. We really have to change now.
yeah. Well, which is why some things around continuous planning, continuous risk assessment, those are some words people are throwing out there,
Mm-hmm.
which does fit in nicely with Agile when you do it the right way
Yep.
as well. So let's talk now about, because I know, you've done a lot of research, you've talked to a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
what's working, what's not working, and tried to kind of come up with a better mousetrap, if you will,
Yep.
on how to actually do this. So what are some of the things that most internal audit groups are missing that's causing them to kind of fail? Or they try this maybe for a few months or a half
Mm-hmm.
a year, and then they throw up their hands. I give up. I'm not going to do this. This doesn't work.
Yeah.
What are, because I think I'm guessing there must be some common things people are missing, and because they're missing those, that's why they're failing in
Yeah.
these efforts.
Absolutely. And part of it is just the fact that we focus so much on theory. I think a lot of people go into it with really big ideas, and they've got this big theoretical situation in their head that uses all of this agile language.
Hmm.
And you get so deep into these agile concepts that you lose the point. You lose the point. You lose the focus. You forget what it was that you were trying to do. And so I think just that one right off the bat is probably one of the biggest. The others, one of the big ones is that people try to carve out the audit process and just turn one piece of it into an agile process. So
Okay.
you,
I'm glad you went there, because again, as I've heard people talking about this, it's like, people, you don't understand. It's not doing things faster or doing part of what we do faster. It's like end to end,
it's
right?
end to end. It is absolutely end to end. And one of the big places people fail is they try to turn field work into an agile process. That's not actually agile. That's just making an iterative work program. Like you're not changing your process. And this is why people fail, because they said, well, I took my field work and I tried to make it agile. So they used all the words, but they
Mhm.
didn't get the point, right? And so they start talking about sprints and they start talking about daily Scrum meetings. And they're taking all of this ceremony that goes along with agile stuff and they're trying to force it onto audit instead of saying, well, if I looked from end to end, from risk assessment to reporting, then and I changed my whole process, then my risk assessment would have changed because it would have been risk-based and not entity-based, the way that we know so many people are doing it.
Yep.
And then my audits would have been risk-based, not entity-based. And then I could take my audit and I can then break it up into sprints based on risks and controls and not on some canned audit program that I found somewhere.
if if anybody's listening and still using a canned audit program, slap yourself, right?
Yeah.
We
And then
should stop
call
doing that.
me and Jason. We're going to talk you out of this.
We'll talk you out of it. We'll talk you off the cliff at that point, right?
And I'm happy to have that conversation all day. But once we change the whole process, then the whole thing changes focus. I'm focused now on management strategic objectives. I want to know the risks to that. I audit to those risks. And because I'm doing this in an agile fashion, I'm worried about the risks that are most important, highest priority for the next quarter. I complete my audit program in those iterations, but based on risks and controls. And then when I get through all this, one of our goals is to no longer have that long, dragged out process for getting the audit report out. Because we actually bake in all of the review and all the conversation into the agile fieldwork process so that by the end of that audit, I am done. And we don't get caught up in this whole form over substance nonsense where I'm fighting over every single word and every single issue in the report. Because and I'll talk about this until I die. The standards don't require you to make a report.
Nope,
So
just to
please,
communicate results.
just communicate results. So
Well, and
sometimes
I think this must be one of the huge areas why people fail.
it
Because
is.
like you said, they try to just change the field work portion of it, but we're still just as ineffective in planning.
Yep.
Both in time, but also in knowing where to focus if you're using an entity or compliance centric, some other kind of audit universe approach. And then we waste a bunch of time in the reporting process as well. And so, they're doing agile in the middle. It's still taking them as much time or probably longer. And they're thinking, oh, well, agile doesn't work.
Yep.
It does, but not when you half-ass it and just do part of it in the middle.
We tried to piecemeal this thing and grab out some of the ideas that made sense to us because we were focused on field work.
Yep. Okay, great. So what other things are kind of missing, from people being able to be successful in making this transition?
So I'll tell you, one of them is something I'm going to blame the nature of who we are.
Okay.
Well,
the better we know ourselves, the better we can actually change, right?
That's right. And I say this as an auditor who's been in this for a very long time. It's just part of who we are. We're by nature perfectionists. We don't allow ourselves to make mistakes. And we've got it beaten into us that you're never allowed to do anything wrong. But with this, you're changing. This is a massive change. Let's not call this anything else. You're probably, this is the biggest change you've ever made to your audit program, right? And so what we're doing with it then is we're making major changes and we have to allow ourselves to make mistakes. And we have to allow things to fail so that we can then correct them. And we do that without judgment. And we do that without holding ourselves, like we destroyed the world and now let's throw the whole program out and let's go back to what we were doing because we're so horrible. It's not that bad. Like one of the ones that comes up a lot, and it's one of the more common, things known about Agile is that you have these daily meetings. We can call them daily Scrum meetings, daily stand-up meetings, call them whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It's a quick conversation. You get the whole team together. Ideally, you've got one of the auditees there with you as well. And in that meeting, you're talking about what's holding us up. What roadblocks do I have? That's it. It's such a simple concept to say, let's have a quick conversation about why I can't do my job today. I can't get documentation from Bob, or I needed to have a conversation with Mary, but she's on PTO for the next week. So who else could I talk to? Well, I don't know because I don't know this organization that well. But if I've got the auditee there with me, they can fix that for me, probably on the spot. Oh, Mary's out. Cool. Go talk to this other person. And that meeting is set up to be something that facilitates progress because we're on these shorter sprints. So I have 2 weeks to get this work done. And by the end of that 2 weeks, I need to be done. But if Mary's out for a week, I'm stuck. I lost half my time.
Right.
One of the things that happens though is that meeting starts to change. And this is a very natural progression. It happens almost all the time. It turns into a status update meeting. I'm looking backwards, not forwards. I'm not talking about what's holding me up. I'm saying, well, here's what I did yesterday. And I think I'm done. And so in this kind of natural falling apart progression that happens, I start giving you status updates. And now I want to know why I'm here because I could have sent you an email for this. I don't need to be in this meeting, so I'm going to stop coming because this is a waste of my time. And it takes a strong person to say, here's what this meeting is about. Let's stay on task. Don't forget why we're here and not let it slip back into some bad practices. And I can almost bet money that this is going to happen to you because every team is going to be doing this. All of your audit groups are going to be doing this. You have multiple people trying to hold this thing together. And when they start to slip, and it's inevitable, you have to remind them, hey, here's what we're doing. And so you have to have some coaching sessions to remind everybody, hey, here's what we're doing. This meeting, this is for roadblocks. This is not for status updates. It falls apart whenever you don't have enough coaching and guidance through this. Good consulting can get you through this. Good consulting is sometimes hard to find. A lot of those consultants come in with so much theory they forget this whole practical idea that people revert back to their old habits and need to be kept on task.
Well, and I think this is important. And again, it's a time for us to really kind of look in the mirror, right? Because like you said, we just because of the personalities that that usually gravitate towards this profession, we tend to want to overplan. And we overplan and we overplan so that there's never any problems, right?
Yep.
And that's exactly, that's why when we talked at the beginning, and some people say, well, Agile is a mindset, right? It has to be built into the culture. Part of that is we've got to kind of change and realize it's okay to make mistakes. The reason we're saving time is because we're not spending so much over planning at the beginning, right? And then, like you said, actually staying true to what it is that we're actually doing in these daily stand-up meetings. It's not new for most of your organizations. Most of my experience was in manufacturing. Guess what happened? Every day at a certain time, right? All the supervisors and managers in the plant come together for about 15 minutes to talk about what's on the schedule and what are the roadblocks, or what did we learn from yesterday that are roadblocks for us today, and how can we get past that so that the lines don't go down?
Yep, I worked in retail for felt like forever, but I worked all through college. I worked in stores. After college went into management in stores, so I was in retail, in actual like selling stuff for about 10 years, and then spent 4 years in corporate working in retail. And I guarantee you, every store out there, it doesn't matter who they are, what brand they are, every single store out there, they start their day this way. This is not new.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one of the things that usually is missing. What are some other ones? I'm guessing too, that some of the other things that are missing when people are trying to do this.
Yeah, one of the big ones I think that's left is we don't really treat it as a true project. We're transforming our department, and this is something that's going to involve a lot of people, a lot of time. It's not something you can just say I'm doing and expect it to happen overnight. It may take a good 3 months to pull this off from start to finish because there's a lot of training involved. There's going to be some piloting and then coming back and talking about it and then tweaking the process. So in the plan that I've put together around all this, it really is just taking it piece by piece. So when we tackle the planning process of how we're going to start going into a quarterly planning cadence and start doing a quarterly risk assessment. So we take that piece as a pilot, and I'm going to run it through and I'm going to try it. And I know it's not going to be perfect the first go around. And so we treat it like a true project, and we say, let's do it. Then let's come back and talk about it. And then we work through it. And then we move on to the next phase. Let's take field work. Let's build it all out. Now I have to train the auditors because they really weren't involved in a lot of the beginning part, right? They probably don't see a lot of the risk assessment. But now I need to train them on what the impact is going to be to them. I'm training, we'll call them scrum leaders, right? The audit leads, the people that are going to be leading those daily meetings and having a lot of that bigger leadership aspect to this. You got to teach them what they're doing. I can't just say, hey, this is your new job. I have to show them and teach them. Same thing with reporting. My reporting is going to change. I got to start prepping the audit committee for a different format and getting them ready for this, especially if you weren't doing quarterly meetings with them. Then that's phase one, because this can continue to progress. One of our goals with this isn't to have quarterly meetings with the audit committee. It's on-demand reporting.
Yeah.
So that at any point ever, if the audit committee, anyone came to you and said, hey, where do we stand on blah, 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 you could say, give me 5 minutes, I'll tell you. And you can tell them because all of your work is happening on a regular cadence. It's never more than 2 weeks old. Mm-hmm. You know, everything is always there. And so as you're producing this for them, you can do it in real time. And part of this, I got to tell you, this is probably one of the biggest things that I'm having a hard time getting audit departments to really grasp, is that that's our actual product. It's audit committee insights. That's what we do. Because probably 90% of the auditors, when I ask them, hey, what do you guys make? Oh, we make audit reports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's not the report, it's the insight to the audit committee and to management in general.
The whole point of doing those audit reports, that was just to close out that one job, right? Mm-hmm. That documented to say, here's what we found, but here was the overall results. It's not even just, here's the issues we found. That's why the standards were always telling us, acknowledge what was done well and communicate what needs to be corrected, because all of those insights are good. That helps us focus on both sides of the coin. And then the audit committee report is the accumulation of all those things that happened in the last quarter. Mm-hmm. But if we start to push away from this whole formal audit report concept, then, well, here's what I found this week, stick it in whatever system I track this thing in, move on. It doesn't really matter. I don't even need that formal report. And now I've moved everything into a centralized location, and now I can start to give you faster reporting. So all of these pieces just fit together, but it's a matter of us taking the whole project on from end to end.
Well, because that's the thing, we do have to go end to end, right? It's got to be in the planning, it's got to be in the field work, it's got to be in the reporting and the follow-up afterwards as well. And like we said at the beginning, that's one of the mistakes a lot of people are making, is they're just focusing on one particular area. But I wanted to dig in a little bit deeper into something that you said just a few minutes ago, because I think again, this is one of those areas probably why so many people are probably struggling. Mm-hmm. Is somebody on the audit team reads a book mm-hmm. or goes to a webinar and they're like, all right, now we're going to do Agile, and everybody get in tow and let's just start doing, right? Mm-hmm. And they start throwing out these terms and everybody's looking around like, okay, what are we doing, right? It's one of those where we tell them what we're going to do, but we never show them the how
exactly
that they're actually going to do it, right? And I think, again, that's why, you know, one person in your team reading a book isn't going to get it done. Mm-mm, right?
Not at
it's
all.
Actually, you know, you've got to have pretty much everybody in your team actually trained up on what to do. And just reading the book is not the training, right?
It's not at all. You know, think about what we do. Everybody in your department, they all have a different role. And there's going to be very specific training for, you know, chief audit executives and directors, because they're going to have more influence from, you know, sort of the bookends. They're going to be the ones focusing primarily on risk assessments, build the plan, and then report that stuff out. Mm-hmm. The team itself, the bulk of the audit department, they're going to be more focused on the fieldwork aspect. But now they need to know, how do they get there from the audit plan? And now they need to know where that's going from an audit report, because they need to feed into those other areas. Because part of this too, if you think about it, like we're doing continuous risk, what I do in field work, and stuff flows right back into the risk assessment for the next quarter. So there's this continual cycle that flows into these things.
Mhm.
And so there's going to be different types of training for everyone. And as we're starting to put this stuff together, we can break them down into those different pieces, but there's absolutely going to be training needed for every single person on the team. And it's not as simple as let me just go read a book.
No, well, and it's again, I mean, how long have you been working in this area and reading the books and trying to apply everything?
I mean, just like 3 years. It's not that long.
It's only been like 3 years, right? Okay, so again, folks, here, because I know a lot of you that are listening are probably going, yeah, but how do I do it? Well, guess what? Toby's figured out exactly what to do and the how of doing it, right? I mean, he spent 3 years going through all this stuff and figuring out how to actually apply it to internal audit in a practical way, right? So again, I guess you got a choice, right? You can spend 3 or 4 years trying to figure it out, going to different webinars or conferences and reading different books and trying to figure it out yourself, or you can just let Toby tell
Yeah,
you exactly how to do it.
if you guys really want to read this stuff, I can give you a list, or we can skip to the end and I can just show you.
Yeah, and I think that's where, again, I've got to assume a lot of people are at that point now where it's like we've been talking about this for how long, but how do I actually do it? Right. Which is why I'm so excited, for us to be talking again too. That you've actually done that.
Yeah.
You put everything exactly together for people so they can get the training, but they don't just get the training, they actually get all the little templates and the
Mm-hmm.
other stuff of exactly how to do it. It's not just, again, like we said at the beginning, a lot of people are kind of throwing theory out there, but you're giving people practical stuff they can actually apply and start doing today.
Yeah. And I tried to keep it just as straightforward as possible. So even when we start putting together in this training that we built out, the actual agile terminology, it's immediately followed by, now here's what we actually call it in audit.
Right. So it's like, I mean, it's almost like learning another language, right?
It
Where it's
is.
like,
Yeah.
okay, well, what is this word? What am I used to seeing this word as, right? So part of it is learning some of the nomenclature, but making it easy, right? Like this is what
Yeah.
Agile calls it. This is a term you're used to probably hearing. So when you hear this,
Mm-hmm.
think that, right?
And then all throughout the training, as we start to like refer to people, so you're going to hear Scrum Master a lot, right? Agile people love Scrum Master as a term. It's just something it's a very big role. It's a very important job duty. So what I've done is every time we use it, I say Scrum Master, who is the audit lead. Like try to keep it back. I don't want to hide from this language, but I also don't want it to become the focus. I don't want you to get so hung up on using this terminology that that's all you're thinking about. I want you to know it that way. If you do have other people in your organization who are agile now, and they start using these words, I want you to know what they're talking about.
Mhm.
But I don't want that to be the focus of the training, because you watch a webinar for that stuff. This is really meant to be guided all the way through from start to finish. How do you go about capacity planning to do this, to figure out what I have to give to my plan? How do I go about the risk assessment? What should I include in my risk assessment? How does field work look? And I've built in templates. I've even shown examples of using different types of software,
Mhm.
things that are free that are out there. There's templates that are baked into it. There's a workbook that's included that even takes you as far as guiding you through the letter to write to your audit committee. So that you can explain this to them, because you're probably going to need to let them know this is a pretty big change, that here's what we're planning on doing. That even when you follow this out, it builds it out like a maturity model to show you here's where I am. And it helps you form that into a letter that says, here's what I'm doing now and here's what I intend to do. So I tried to just guide you through it every step of the way.
Well, because that's why I think this to me, and I've been feeling this way for probably a year or so, this is probably the biggest seismic shift
Mm-hmm.
to internal audit. We've been talking about risk-based. Agile actually is a way to hopefully get people past them saying or thinking they're doing risk-based, but they're still
Yeah.
just doing the old bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And actually get them to doing it kind of the right way. And I love what you said, because, you know, if you remember when we were talking about some of the mistakes, right? A lot of people just try to apply this on field work. No,
No.
you've actually shown people exactly. So how does your planning change? How does your risk assessment change, right? How do you go from a 1 year plan to you know, a 1 year forecast with a 3 year rolling, kind of a 3 month rolling, not 3 year rolling. Hello, 3 month rolling, how you actually implement it in field work, but then also how you change the reporting at the end of it, right? So again, if people just follow the process, walk, you know, step by step through the process that you've laid out, they're going to be successful in doing this, right?
They will be. And I truly believe that they will be. And the program is built so that no matter how big or small you are, this works.
Mhm.
So if you're a smaller group and you're thinking, well, I don't need this because I only have, 3 or 5 people, you absolutely do. You probably need it more
Mhm.
because you're going to be in a better position to have an actual impact on that organization. The really big departments, same kind of thing goes. They're going to have the ability to go from what they're doing in a traditional model to agile, but there's a whole lot more people involved.
Mhm.
And so they may need to break this thing up a bit more and do it in pieces, but they're just going to do the same process and laying it out. They just may need to do a few more phases of it. But this is something that's going to apply to every single audit department. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, really doesn't have any impact of, where in the world you are, what you work in. This is something that's going to hit every single one of us.
Well, and 2020 has only sped up the process too.
It did.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's made it more necessary right now that we actually, you know, kind of jump into this, and that's why I'm so glad that you took these 3 years. And again, people, 3 years. It took them
Yeah.
3 years to come up with all this stuff, right? So don't think you can go shortcut it in like a month by reading a book. Just use what he's actually already put together from over 3 years of studying, of talking, you know, with people, figuring out what works, what doesn't work. Because here's the beauty of this, right? You're afraid of making mistakes. You don't have to make some of the same stupid mistakes other
Mhm.
people are making, because he's already learned what most
Yeah.
of the people have been doing wrong. So you just follow the process. You don't have to make some of those same
No.
mistakes.
And this is where we take our own medicine. We would never allow somebody else to say, well, I'm going to keep doing this way because it's the way I've always done it. We're in that position right now. The way we've always done it doesn't work.
Mhm.
It's a broken model that just doesn't work anymore. And we already had a lot of the pieces ready for us. There was enough research that had been done. There was enough that had been written on it. There was tons of theory. But now we need to move, right? This is our call to action. We have to do this now.
Yeah. Well, for those of you that have been sitting here as you've been listening to this and you're like, come on, tell me, where can I get it? How can I do? What do I do? Where do I go? Where do I go? Well, Toby has put together a course, certified, right? So it's got certified in front of it too. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but certified Agile Auditor Professional
Mm-hmm.
as well. A full course that walks you through step by step exactly what you need to do, along with the templates and other things like that. So you hit the ground running right now. And like we talked about, this isn't just something for like one person in your department to get. This is something that really, if you're going to be serious about doing agile and not just dip your toe in it, but if you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be serious, this is something that you should consider probably your whole team actually going through and learning if you really want to be successful in it.
Absolutely. Because if you've got a group sitting there and you need them all on a common vocabulary,
Mm-hmm.
they all need to go through this training. The training is really designed to cover the full audit lifecycle end to end. And now everyone needs to know all pieces of it
Mm-hmm.
because we're all going to have some sort of a play inside of it. Your audit staff is going to need to know how they got to that point. How did the audit get to me?
Mm-hmm.
So you need to know the risk assessment process. And they're going to be feeding things into the reporting that you're going to be using from a management point of view to send to the audit committee. So there's no piece that we can say, well, the audit team needs to know this, but they don't need to know the rest of it. Everyone needs to know the full process.
Well, and two, kind of the other side from it is, we've talked before, and there's research out there. One of the three big areas that people are looking to change and to do something different on, one of them is agile,
Hmm.
right? And so, the other thing that this course does for you is you get a certification
Yep.
in this as well. So what does that mean, right? Like, well, why do I need a certification in this? Well, there are lots of chief audit executives looking for people
Hmm.
who know how to do this, right? So, yeah, you can go get your Scrum Master, you can go do some other stuff, but it still doesn't help you translate that into doing audit, right? That's what
Yeah.
Toby's been doing for 3 years. But this actually certifies and proves to other people that you know what you're talking about when it comes to agile auditing, which from a personal career standpoint is a huge plus, because what you're going to see again is chief audit executives are looking for people with this skill set, but those people do not exist in the
Right.
marketplace right now. So going through getting a certification like this actually proves to a future employer that you actually know what you're talking about, because it's a real certification. You got to take a test, you got to prove that you actually understand it, but you also have all the tools that go along with it so you can actually perform and implement it as well. It's not just a theoretical, piece of paper. You can actually do it.
Yeah. Think about it like this. If you're out there and you're putting yourself out in the market, and there's a department who's already made the transition to Agile, and they're looking at a big stack of paper, all these resumes. And when they're looking through that, they're thinking, this is all fantastic. And I'm going to bring this person in. Not only do I have to train them in what my department does and my company culture, I also got to break them of all these old habits now of being a traditional process based auditor.
Yep.
But if you walk in with this certification, you just save them a whole lot of time because now you already know how to do this.
Yep.
And so you're walking in with a huge advantage over everybody who's really still stuck in that traditional way of working, because you're walking in knowing the concept, knowing how to do it, all the ins and outs from end to end. And it's a huge advantage.
Oh, it makes it much easier. Having hired lots of people over the years, that's one of those things that sticks out. And especially so, again, like you said, whether the department has already taken that and they're already doing it, so now they want to hire people that already know it,
Hmm.
or if they're in the process of trying to change or move that way,
Yep.
usually on new hires, they're going to be looking for people that have this skill set. And we see it in data analytics
Hmm.
already. I think I'll get the numbers right. I think about 10 or what was it? 10% of the people in audit have audit and data analytics background. 30% of the jobs are asking for people with internal audit and data,
Yep.
right? Same thing is going to happen with agile auditing. The number of job postings and other things requesting or having, requiring, if you will,
Hmm.
that is going to go up as well, which again, for your career is a great place to be in if
It
you
is.
already have it.
This is one of the things I expect to start seeing popping up on job descriptions.
Yep.
So, right now we start to see they're looking for people who have this many years, and I'm looking for somebody who has CIA or CISA or whatever other certification. I fully expect to start seeing I'm looking for people certified in Agile,
Mhm.
because this is something that is it's massive. I mean, we cannot stress enough one of the biggest shifts we've ever seen happen in audit. I mean, this is as big as going from what we used to be checklist to risk based. Now we're moving from traditional to an agile process. It's a massive undertaking, and this is a chance for us to get ahead of it.
Well, it is. And Toby, again, I know we got to kind of wrap up for today, but
Mhm.
thank you for actually putting this out there, and glad to be here trying to help spread the message as well, because like I said, clearly I think personally that this is one of the biggest seismic shifts when done right, but you have to
Yeah.
understand how to do it right. This isn't something you can half-ass and go read a book and think that you're actually going to doing it. You're going to make some of those same mistakes other people have. After 3 to 6 months, you're going to throw your hand up and say, I can't do this. But You can do it if you actually follow the process and just take the course, get certified, do exactly what's Toby's showing you to do. You're gonna be successful in it. Yeah. So Toby, thank you for taking the time today. And, again, so we talked a little bit about the program. We'll make sure down in the show notes is a link to it. But, whatever you do, choice is up to you, but whatever you do, this is the future. And so you really need to jump in with both feet and actually learn how to do it. Get out of the theory and actually learn the step-by-step on exactly how to do this. And thank you, Toby, for putting that together so people can actually do that.
No, it was an absolute privilege to get to do it. So I'm just hoping that we can influence lots of people, get them out ahead of us.
Well, and help them do their job easier too.
Maybe help them do their jobs better.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thanks, Toby. We'll have to have you on again, I'm sure.
Thanks, Jason. Right.
Thanks. See ya. And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Jamming with Jason. Keep on rocking in the audit world. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you later on the next show. If you'd like to earn continuing professional education for listening to today's episode, head on over to C-Risk Academy at ondemand.criskacademy.com. And that's C as in the letter C, riskacademy.com. Not only do you get a CPE certificate, but you also will have access to the video version of today's show. The views and opinions expressed on this show are that of the individuals and not of their respective organizations.